Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's card uses the Watercolor Wings set by Stampin' Up. It just came out this year. It's got a large butterfly, it's got a medium butterfly, and it's just got one single stamp for this smaller butterfly. I'm also using the Altenew Label Love set for my sentiment. So I'm going to start off first by taking a piece of Ranger watercolor paper, and I'm going to cut off a strip of washi tape that's striped with black and white. I'm going to adhere it to the side of my paper, and I'm doing this because I want to make sure I know exactly which space I'm going to be putting my butterflies in so I can center it on the white area. And I just folded it around the edge to make it a little cleaner. Now I'm only using 2 of the butterfly stamps for this medium butterfly. I'm not using the solid one. So I'm going to first take kind of the middle level stamp, and I'm going to stamp it here on my watercolor paper at an angle with some broken China ink. And then the third stamp of the butterfly, so I'm not using the first solid stamp, I'm going to use cracked pistachio. I'm going to line it up using my MISTI and stamp it down. Now each time I stamp this butterfly, I'm going to take a Ranger detailer brush, and it's just got a tube of water in it, so water comes out the brush, and I'm going to blend the pistachio and the broken china together. I'm not going to blend it too much, just so that they meet. And I'm also going to go over the blue area because it's watercolor paper, it's textured, so I want to make sure that it's pretty well blended. So I'm going to go all the way around the butterfly and do this, and then after I was done blending this out a little bit, I decided I wanted it to blend just a tiny bit more. So I took my broken china ink, I put a little on my craft mat and picked it up with my Ranger detailer brush, and I just went over the edge of the blue just to soften it up a little bit, and it was perfect. So I didn't want those harsh lines in there. I wanted these butterflies to be really subtle and beautiful. So I'm going to speed this up as I finish the other parts of these wings. Now I went ahead and created a mask out of Post-it, and I'm just using my broken china. I'm going to put it on the sticky side of my Post-it, and I'll cut it out. Now I don't have to worry about cutting out the bottom because I'm just going to be layering on the top because I'm going from the bottom up. So I'll put my mask on my first butterfly, and then I'll arrange the second one to overlap just a little bit. So I want each of these to overlap the one underneath it just a tad. So I'll go ahead, stamp this again with some broken china, and then I will use my cracked pistachio on the second layer of the stamp, and then again blend it out. So I'm going to do this on all 5 butterflies until I get to the top. So I'm going to do all this first. I'm going to let it dry before I start adding the black. Now this is a Kiritake Zig Clean Color Real brush in black. So it's a watercolor brush. It's got a lot of ink, so it's very intense in color. And I'm going to color just some of the edges. I'm definitely coloring the center where the 2 wings meet, and then I'll color out from there, and then just some pieces. And it doesn't have to be exact because this is a watercolor look. Now once I've got my lines, which this is a very fine tip so it's easy to make these lines, I'm going to take the detailer brush with the water in it, and I'm going to just blend the edge of the black. Now you could go all the way to the outside of the black that I drew in, but it might start bleeding outside the butterfly, so I was pretty careful to stay inside the black edge so that it just blended toward the center of my butterfly. And by doing just a few of the areas and not the whole thing, it really makes it look a little bit more dimensional. Now these markers are sold individually, so you could, if you wanted to, just purchase the black. I think the black is a really nice highlighter, and I'm going to use it on a future card. So you'll see me use it again. Now for these white dots, I made sure to keep them white when I was coloring my broken china in on the center of the butterfly, and I'm just lining the bottom half of the circle. So I'm still making a circle, making it a little thicker on the bottom. It doesn't have to be exact, so I'm just kind of running my marker along the inside just on the bottom. So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to do this same exact process on all of the butterflies, and you'll notice that I'm going to skip one, and that's just to let it dry, because if you work with 2 colors that are wet, they'll start blending together, and I want these butterflies to be very individual. Now you'll also notice that where my butterflies overlap, I'm making sure to color the butterfly that's in the front with the black marker. So that way the one that's in front is more prominent. So wherever there's one behind, I'm not really focusing the black on that one in that area. I'm focusing the black on the one that's in the front. Now I'm using the Ranger watercolor paper because it is the brightest watercolor paper that I have, so it's white, and I'm going to be doing white on white, so I wanted to make sure I got a really bright paper. Alright, so now I've finished with all my butterflies, and I wanted to add some splatter, so I'm going to take my black soot distress ink, and rather than spritz the ink on the craft mat, I found that the best way to do this is to take your brush and then wet the brush. So there's a cup of water that I'm reaching for in front of me here, and I'm just getting some water on my brush, and then I'll swish it around, and that makes sure that the ink doesn't get too diluted. And also it makes sure that you don't get too much water on your brush so that you get some thin dots. If you want thin dots, put not as much paint on your brush. Now here I don't know what I'm doing here, but luckily by a miracle it did not get ruined when it fell into the ink down there. So here are the dots up close, and it looks really good. I like the way it came out. Okay, so I'm going to stamp my sentiment using my Misty because it does have a very expansive black area. I want to make sure I get good coverage, and with my VersaFine ink I almost always do, and I don't need to double stamp, just as I did in this case, and then I just cut out the sentiment by hand. Now this is corrugated paper by Stampin' Up, and something new this year. It comes in 12 by 12 sheets. Here's the 12 by 12 white that I cut up. It's weird because if you hold it this way you don't see the horizontal lines, but if you hold it the other way you can. It's kind of strange. So it comes in a pack of 4, 2 sheets of white, 2 sheets of craft. And you can see it's got just tiny lines, and it's very, very textured. It's a really cool paper. So I just cut 2 strips of it, and I'm going to first start with 1 strip, and I cut them a little bit different in size. One I think is a 1/2 inch, and one's maybe a little larger than that, almost 3/4 of an inch. And my butterfly panel is 3.5 inches, so I just took whatever was left of the space and filled it with the corrugated paper. I thought I had ink in my hands there, which would not be unusual for me. Alright, so I had a little excess, so I'm just trimming it off from the other side with a scissor. Now I do this a lot. I cut my foam tape vertically so it can be thinner. I guess I could just buy another roll that's thinner, but I have a lot of this 1/2 inch. And then I realized I was about to adhere my sentiment that I forgot to put the middles of the butterflies on. So I'm just going to use some archival ink because it's really good, nice, crisp stamping ink. And I'm going to stamp each of the middles here. And then rather than using the antenna that comes with the stamp set, I wanted it to be very, very delicate and fine. So I took my Copic multiliner pen, which is a 0.3, and I just drew them in myself. So I'll hold it up here so you can see how pretty that looks when you just draw a very, very faint line. Alright, now it's time to adhere the sentiment. And that's it. That's the card for today. So I hope you enjoyed it, a little bit of masking for our challenge, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.